Good evening, everyone. We've got a little feedback, Brad. Yep. Okay. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Greytown Council meeting of February 6, 2024. This meeting is being held in person and online with a link provided in the agenda header on our website. Before we begin, I just would like to formally welcome our new town manager, Michael Foley, who's joining us as the former mayor of Westbrook, or, well, soon to be former mayor of Westbrook. And we're all very excited to have him on board. He's been jumping right in, and we just, super thrilled to have you here and guiding us along the way. I don't know if you want to just take a quick minute before we do roll call to...
Sure. I really appreciate the opportunity, as I shared last Tuesday, for my swearing in. This has been a personal and professional goal of mine, and what I sought an education for, to be a municipal manager, and definitely I'm excited to be joining the town. There's a lot of opportunity here in the town. I served the city of Westbrook for just over 2 decades, and so I'm excited to use my skills and abilities to help serve this town, hopefully for a long time, and be able to see some of the exciting things that are coming down the pike come to fruition. So very excited to bring my experience here, and looking forward to working with you all, looking forward to working with the residents, and looking forward to meeting folks. I'll be doing double duty for a few more days, but next week on Tuesday I'll be here full time all the time, and so be sure to stop in and ask the clerk that you'd like to meet me, and if I'm not tied up, I'll definitely come out to meet folks. I'll also be attending a number of community meetings in the coming weeks, not to go to everyone on the long term, but to be there to just meet people, to get to know people in the community, as well as visit area businesses and community organizations. So looking forward to meeting you in the days, weeks, and months ahead. Yeah,
welcome.
Thanks.
Okay, I'll begin with roll call. Councillor Gass?
Present.
Councillor McGuire?
Present.
Councillor Meany?
Present.
Councillor Height?
Here.
And I am Councillor Chappell, and as I just mentioned, to my right is Town Manager Mike Foley. If everyone could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before I look for a motion on the next agenda item, does anyone want to remove anything from the consent agenda?
No, I have nothing.
No. Okay. Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
And the consent agenda includes minutes from the town council meeting on January 16th, the executive session on January 23rd, and the executive session on January 27th. Any no, we don't do comments on consent agenda. Okay, I'm going to a vote. Ann?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Marty?
Yes.
Matthew?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes. Great. Okay, next up is public comments of non-agenda items. Comments are intended for information sharing, not discussion. Comments in excess of 3 minutes are welcome at the end of the agenda prior to adjournment. Is there anyone in the chambers who'd like to make a comment on non-agenda items? No? Okay. And I'm not seeing anyone online. So I will close public comment at 7:18 p.m. Does anyone have any adjustments to the agenda?
No, I have none.
Nope. Okay. Great, so I will move on to action items. So actually, before I move on, there's members of the audience here, and are you here to comment on agenda items? No, okay, that's fine. I just want to make sure we would be addressing any committee appointments if they were waiting around for that.
Good thought.
Yep.
Working on a merit badge.
Okay, Okay, so first I'm looking for a motion to review and act upon removing from the table consideration of the Maine Department of Transportation Cooperative Agreement for the Village Transformation Project.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, so I'm happy to report that I think this might be the third time this is on our agenda for approval.
Okay.
And Ann has been working extremely hard in coordination with representatives from the Maine DOT to get this cooperative agreement in a state where we could proceed with a vote for adoption. And well, you'll notice in your packet was an older version with suggested edits, which we had reviewed with the DOT probably about a month and a half ago. And they have incorporated, I believe, at least to some degree, all of them.
Yeah.
And then if you will notice, we did get some updates. I don't know if anyone had a chance to check their email in the last day or two, but we did have some updates that had that language incorporated in it from the DOT after their legal staff had reviewed it. And then, Ann, I don't know if you want to just give an update on where you are with your conversations with Dale since then. Dale is a representative from the Maine Department of Transportation.
Yeah, Dale Dowdy is Director of Planning for Maine Department of Transportation. Yeah, I actually was able to catch up with Dale today, and late this afternoon, and I, in talking a little bit with Mike as well, we kind of gone through, you know, this newest draft, and it's really, we've come quite a long way from where we started, at least when I re-entered the picture. And I think pretty much everything that we had wanted to see there is in there. There were a few things that we thought could be a bit clearer, and so I pitched to Dale yesterday a few additional bullet items, which I sent to you following my conversation with him late this afternoon, so there's, you know, virtually no likelihood that you've seen them at this point.
Email, yep.
But they were basically, I didn't think to kind of cross-reference it with the one that's in the packet now, but there's a section called, hang on, just get this pulled up.
The scope of the initial design phase?
Yeah, that one, and there were okay, here we go. On the newest version, it begins on the bottom of page 2 and continues into page 4. And I proposed to him adding 3 bullets. The first of which was working with the town of Gray's engineer to create design standards for location of utilities underground, including the water and the stormwater. This is a key issue for our town engineer, Will Haskell. He wants to see more uniform placement. Like, it's hard to adhere to this in every case, but in general, if you know that you know, the water pipes are going to run down one side of the road and the stormwater pipes are on the other side of the road, and, you know, maybe, I don't know, some utility conduit or something in the middle, you know, or under the sidewalk on a consistent basis, then you sort of know where to go to look for those things. And Portland, the city of Portland, he says, offers a good model of that. Mm-hmm. And so Dale thought that was okay. He thought he could accept that language or something close to it. And then the next bullet was incorporating into the design, to the extent possible, the capacity for a future wastewater system. Yeah. And he was comfortable with that language, you know, with some limits. You know, if the town decided that it needed, you know, a really outsized pipe or something, it might be difficult to accommodate, but he certainly thought they could work with that. And then the third one was working with the town of Gray to design the capacity to move overhead utilities such as telephone and cable lines underground on that, I think it's a 2-block section of Main Street. And this has been kind of a, you know, on our wish list for quite some time now. We haven't really made a lot of progress towards figuring out how exactly, how much this would cost and kind of what's in, I think Doug has had a pretty good idea of what's involved with it, but we just haven't been able to get a lot of traction on it. So somewhat to my surprise, Dale agreed to that as well. He reiterated his position that the underground utilities are very complicated and expensive. And by underground utilities, I'm talking about things like the CMP line, the electric line, and cable. And that most towns, when they take a look at it, they decide against doing that. I mean, in his experience working with towns around the state, partly because he says in his experience that it takes a lot of time to figure it out and a lot of money. And if we decided to pursue it, the project could be delayed by a year or two. So that's definitely a consideration. So I brought up the sort of plan B, which would be to move the utilities behind the buildings that front Main Street, which is something the principal group had proposed, or the council had discussed with principal group, our consultants on this. And he was in favor of that. He did, say it's not nothing to do that. It involves mostly right-of-way issues was what he was referring to. But he also thought that doing so would make it a lot easier for us to make the kind of bike ped improvements on Main Street that we've envisioned doing. So he was certainly in favor of that. So it sort of boiled down to one strategy for moving this forward and getting it off our collective desks is to have the council approve the agreement subject to those, those and maybe possibly other minor edits by us and MDOT, and that we could task our town manager with, negotiating with MDOT and using his judgment to say, and I would certainly be willing to help with that. If something really needed to come back to council, like if MDOT comes back with something that just is not something that we're comfortable with, or would, that the council should take another look at. But it could move this forward. We could also wait another couple weeks and have more time to digest it, which might also be the right thing to do. So I'm open either way, but those are two paths forward.
Okay. Before I move on to further comments, I just want to clarify, we're currently on a motion to remove this from the tables, and we haven't voted on it yet.
Yeah.
No, I'm glad we're having this conversation now, because I'd like to get people's thoughts on whether or not we should move forward before we vote to remove it.
Right, that makes sense, yep.
Yeah, okay. Dan, did you have something? You looked like you were itching.
Well, I do have something to say, but I'm not sure that we shouldn't vote first, but I think that's a formality. Thank you for your work on this. These three things I will say are near and dear to my heart. I think that we're just never gonna have another opportunity to do this. And I think that eventually the town is gonna grow to the point where wastewater and possibly gas, which is something that isn't on this list that I'd like to see us add, or at least make a try for. One day will be things that the town will definitely have to grapple with, and since we're tearing up the road so extensively, we can certainly save the town in the future quite a bit of money if we organize this now. I'm perfectly okay with the idea that, we've got the ball down to the 5-yard line.
Yeah.
And I'm perfectly okay with letting Michael carry it over into the end zone. I will say that I did struggle a little bit comparing MDOT Legal's version, which had no edits in it at all, with our version. So I can't sit here and honestly say that all the changes we asked for were there in the way we wanted.
I think the only one that may not have been edited, just to amend what I said earlier, was the indemnification. I'm not saying this word. Indemnification piece. They were not comfortable with changing, or their lawyers were not comfortable with changing that piece. So it's still just reflective of any impact on the state and not on the town in that section. And correct me if I'm wrong, but
That's my understanding as well. Certainly Mike could inquire with that, but
yeah.
I still don't really understand why we can't also be indemnified, but I'd be curious to have Mike delve into that a little more.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Are others comfortable with approving this? We can, on our next motion, we would amend the motion to allow for any minor edits with Mike finalizing negotiation.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that, but I wouldn't want, I'm not in favor of further complicating things by adding gas to the mix, I guess, at this point.
I believe gas was listed as one of the possible
Oh.
bullet points already. It's more of a possibility for design. It
Okay.
was, none of what's in this document are 100% secured
Guaranteed.
commitments.
Right, right.
It's an ideal version that the town would like to account for, and as we go through the design process with the DOT and secure funding, hopefully from the federal government, we might need to amend our expectations based on the funds we receive or the
I-
reality of the situation underground, so.
I thought I'd heard Dan say that gas wasn't.
It wasn't included in these bullets that Anne was proposing to
okay.
add, but it is captured in the document and other locations, yeah. Any other comments? Okay, well, let's vote on removing this from the table. And, Mike, did I see you wanted to say something?
Well,
Sorry.
I'll just, thank you, I'll just mention that I think the general substance of the agreement is what the town wants.
Mhm.
These suggestions, so if the council wants to authorize the agreement with the suggestions incorporated, and any minor changes that need to take place, that I can sign that with Maine DOT. And I'll probably maybe have legal take one quick review at it again, just before I sign it, once the details are finalized.
Yeah. And I think that only, just from a FYI standpoint, the motions to take something off the table aren't debatable. So just in an ideal world, we'd vote on that and then we'd get into the motion to do what we're doing
I
now.
was researching that as we spoke.
Okay, well, noted for,
It's not a motion I encounter too often.
you're right, so, yeah,
Or
noted.
one we use.
I mean, I guess I was just,
To remove. from
yeah, if we didn't want to remove it, how, we need to decide that, but we would have anyway, but I'll
Yeah, it
note
wasn't a
that.
criticism, just the,
No, it's good to
just
know.
an FYI.
Yeah, good ongoing
Process.
continuing education.
A learning
Yeah,
process
exactly.
here. Okay, well, let's vote on removing this from the table then. Matthew,
Yes.
Marty,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Anne,
Yes.
and I'm also a yes. Okay, so I'm actually going to just amend this as I'm looking for a motion. So I'm looking for a motion to review and act upon approving the Maine Department of Transportation Cooperative Agreement for the Village Transportation Project, subject to minor edits by the Town of Gray and MDOT, and as approved by Michael Foley, the town manager.
So moved?
Second?
Because this is kind of a legal issue, I believe that all of our action items have to be orders. So it's, I think the underlined portion of number 2, ordered the Greytown Council authorizes.
Okay. So you'd prefer I read the order? not
Yeah,
the-
I think that's the
Oh,
piece
yeah,
that we
that's
need.
right, yeah.
Okay, so Anne and Matthew, we need to amend the motion to say ordered. The Greytown Council authorizes the town manager to negotiate and sign the proposed State of Maine Department of Transportation Cooperative Agreement for multipurpose design cost sharing for proposed improvements, subject to minor edits by the town and MDOT. Are you okay with that amendment?
That sounds lovely.
Yes.
Mm.
Okay. Does anyone want to, I know we did our talking before, does anyone have any final thoughts?
Nope.
No?
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh,
All right.
I just was gonna add that, Dale told me that, once he gets our feedback, he then has to send it to contracts in his office, so,
Hopefully
take
it's
a
a
deep
smaller
breath.
black hole than the
Yeah,
other one.
right. He says it'll only take 2 or 3 days, so that might mean a month or so, but in Dale's parlance, but, no, he said he thought it would be quick, it's just, it's really
The
just a.
council will be done with it.
Yeah, we'll be done with it, and we'll just, so it just, there's a little bit more process, I just wanted to say that.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that clarification on the timeline.
They use a geological timescale. I think, every year.
The twilight zone of
Yeah.
state legislature.
He's been really wonderful to work with, I have to say. I mean, apart from the time, the time it's taken, he's been very agreeable and.
I've certainly been happy with the movement we've seen,
Yeah.
both on our end and the DOTs in the last few months. I think we've
Yeah.
accomplished a lot, and I'm looking forward to moving this process forward. with
And
them.
I'll just note that Dale and other staff at Maine DOT, I have an incredible working relationship in advance of my time here at the town, so that relationship will continue, and Dale is very excited to work with me. Maine DOT has a lot of interest here in Gray, and they want to advance those interests.
Say one quick thing.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
When I first got on the council, our relationship with MDOT was not quite as rosy. And it's taken a lot of hard work and recognize on their part as well as our part to get us to the point where we are today, which I think is much more of a partnership and much more positive. And I appreciate their effort in helping us get here too.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I'm looking to go to vote. Matthew?
Yes.
Marty?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Anne?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes. Little mini celebration there. That's good to move that
Finally off
along.
the agenda.
Right, woohoo.
Break out the champagne.
Okay.
Do we have a policy on that?
Next up, I'm looking for a motion, so ordered the Greytown Council appoints Becky Gauthier as a regular member of the Library Board of Trustees. Actually, this should say Library Trustees, not Library Board of Trustees, with a term
Yes.
expiring on August 31st, 2026.
So
moved.
moved. Or
I'll
second.
give it to Dan and Marty. I just want to thank Becky for reapplying. I know she's been a standing member on the Library Trustees for quite a while, and is certainly engaged and done an excellent job, I think, both as vice chair and secretary in the past, so.
I think the library board is old language that. we
It
just
is,
haven't,
yeah.
That we need to clear up. Make sure in the final order that we strike that. part.
Right, yeah, we do need to strike the board part. Okay, anyone else have any comments?
But just thank you.
Yes?
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much, yeah.
We'll go to vote. Anne?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Marty?
Yes.
Matthew?
Yes.
I'm also a yes. Okay. Next, I'm looking for a motion, so ordered the Greytown Council appoints Andrew Reddy as a regular member of the Community Television Advisory Committee with a term expiring on August 31st, 2026.
So moved?
Second.
Any comments?
Thank you.
Thank
Andrew.
you.
Yeah, I'll just say that I've noticed Mr. Reddy's been present at several of our committee meetings off and on lately, so he seems like he was figuring out what was most appropriate for his involvement, and I'm glad he's chosen the
Sounds
CTAC committee.
Krista.
Yep,
Can
yep, go.
I just want to thank him. The quality of his application was such that I really felt that I got a good sense of him and what he wanted to bring to the committee, and actually to all the applicants who are in tonight's packet. It's very much appreciative because we don't often get to meet you. And it's just very helpful to understand we're ultimately responsible for all these committees, so it's kind of nice to know what the expertise that exists on each committee, so I appreciate them taking the time to fill out their applications the way they did.
Yeah, nice and thorough,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a good point. Thank you, Dan. We'll go to vote. Matthew?
Yes.
Marty?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Anne?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes. Okay, and I'm looking for a motion, so ordered the Greytown Council appoints Annie Boissevain, and I apologize.
Boissevain.
How do you say it?
Boissevain.
Boissevain, oh, it's French, isn't it? As a regular member of the Wild Blueberry Festival Committee with a term expiring on August 31st, 2026.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. You can tell I did not take French in high school. And I just want to thank Annie again for her time and commitment to joining the Wild Blueberry Festival. It sounds like she was formerly a volunteer for the festival, and I'm glad she's able to step up and join committee itself. Any other comments?
Just
No?
a-
Go. Dan?
Something on our to-do list, nothing to do with Annie's application, but we're still getting applications in 2 different formats.
I noticed that also.
One of the things we need to do, I know it's because some people are coming to us through the website, they're coming to us from different channels, but the applications ask different things, and there are also some inaccuracies in the application that I think we need to move, so I'm not sure. I mean, I know it's not a huge priority, but something we need to address at some point in time.
Right, I think the primary concern is one of the applications, I think it's the online one, notes that applicants will be provided with a Town of Gray email account, which is not,
The
pol-
case.
Yeah,
it's not
that's right.
policy here,
Yeah.
except for judicial boards and committees,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
planning board and such. So we should take that off.
Yeah, I would just note that, I do know Annie, as she mentioned in her application, and she's just gonna be a terrific, asset to the Wild Blueberry, Committee. She's a descendant of a famous suffragist,
Oh. It's notable history.
Inez Milholland
And she
Boissevain.
works in Westbury.
As she does. Well then,
Okay,
the stars are aligning.
I will go to vote. Anne,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Marty,
Yes.
Matthew.
Yes.
And I'm also yes. Okay, next up is a report from the council chair. So people may have noticed we've had a lot going on since we met last on January 16th. In that time, we have interviewed and appointed Michael as new town manager, and I just want to, again, welcome him here. We certainly have faith in his abilities to lead us through all the work we're doing here in town. Anne and I also had the opportunity to meet with a couple of our state legislators. We met with Teresa Peirce and Annie Graham to discuss some pending legislation related to what is known as LD1, or the property tax levy limit. And we'll be doing some outreach about for an upcoming hearing about that at the State House. Also, I had, during his time as interim manager, I met with Josh Tiffany and also Ben McCall from Jensen Bear to discuss some legal issues that the town is involved with. And we'll be having an executive session on February 20th to discuss those with the rest of the council and give an update. We also had, and I'm sure Ann will go into this in more detail, a full meeting with the Gray Village Transportation Project team, which included representatives from the Maine DOT, staff here, including Doug Webster and Kyle Adiniak, and Mike Foley. And then we also had representatives from Goral Palmer, Will Haskell, and our consultants from Principal Group in the room, where we were finalizing elements of this cooperative agreement, which we voted on earlier, and had some discussions in preparation for the business forum that occurred yesterday evening, which I'm sure Ann will update us on, and also some discussions about communication strategies going forward. And then I just want to remind everyone that this evening we had our first budget input session. We were originally planning to have some full-day meetings for our budget process this year. We might be amending that. The council and Mike and staff are still working out the details for that. But I just want to encourage everyone watching and people here in the audience to keep an eye on any budget meetings that might be occurring. We certainly would welcome people to attend those, send any input our way, either at the meeting or, as Ann mentioned earlier, we're available over email. We're happy to have input on the budget process as we move forward. And that's all I had for this evening for my report. Mike, I know that it says here, report from the town manager, and you just, a few days on the job, so you might not have a ton to update us on, but if you want to
Yeah,
take a
sure.
minute, sure.
Thank you for the opportunity to update folks. In the future, I'll hope to have at least a written manager's report to provide to the council in advance of meetings in the packet, and or in advance of meetings, at least before the meeting, and to be able to read from and expand on. But as everyone knows, I was sworn in last Tuesday and hit the ground running Wednesday, Thursday, and then I've been back again every day this week. And so looking forward to getting settled into my new position here. And this week, we've been really working hard to get the budget finalized in the coming weeks, so we can get the review schedule and the budget itself finalized. And then I'll hopefully be out of the office more and meeting people and spending more time with staff, getting to know the department head team, getting to know employees of the town, and getting to know community members. So looking forward to meeting people in the days, weeks, and months ahead, as I mentioned earlier, and looking forward to the upcoming budget process and the work that we're doing for economic development in the community with the Village Transformation Project. A lot of exciting things happening, and we'll have a lot of things to talk about.
Yeah, I'm sure we will.
Yes, and I just want to, thank the work of interim manager Josh Tiffany. He took some well-deserved time off following his appointment, and look forward to reconnecting with him in the days ahead as well.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, thank you. Thank you to Josh, of course. Okay, I'll move on to committee reports. Marty, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Let me get to my list. The Wild Blueberry Festival will meet via Teams on February the 13th at 6:30 p.m. Planning Board meets Thursday night the 8th to discuss Eagle Ridge subdivision at 7 p.m. Finance Committee meets February 29th at 4 p.m. Zoning Board of Appeals met December 31st. Shane Brady was asked to get his property surveyed showing the boundaries of the property, where the setbacks are supposed to be by ordinance and where he would like them to be, and then we're gonna have a site walk in about 2 months. Also, zoning meets February 21st at 7 p.m. as needed. If there's no applications, then there won't be a meeting. And Community Day, no meetings are set yet, but Anthony in the Recreation says that a May 18th is a no-go, and that's all I have.
Oh, okay, May 18th is on.
Yeah, we'll have to, thanks, Marty. We'll have to circle back on a Community Day date. I did hear from Lisa. I ran into her on Saturday, and she mentioned that Anthony had noted that that wasn't a good date. Okay, Matthew, do you want to?
Sure. I met with the GTAC, a great,
Community Television Advisory Committee. It's a
Yes.
lot of words.
I always stumbled over that.
Yeah.
and I guess the big news in that arena, and I think Mike Foley knows about this, I guess the legislature passed a bill that's gonna have a lot of bearing on the town's authority in franchising, and creates a dispute resolution process that would involve the Public Utilities Commission. It really seems to be a bit of landmark legislation for towns and their authority in the franchising process. Also, the 15-town group that's negotiating with Charter has also started up, and they met recently. And Mike, were you
Yes.
were at that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So please feel free to correct any of my assertions here. But that's getting started again, and we should probably, obviously Kyle should be representing the town on in that group, and whether or not we should have any, a representative from the council on that group or not.
I think Doug has been representing?
I think John Hart was kind of involved in that negotiations for the franchise fees in the year
Oh,
or
really? I
two
didn't know.
prior, but yeah, go ahead, Dan.
I forget who the person was representing Gray at that.
There's,
Yeah.
I was briefly.
Oh, you were briefly,
there's also a subset component to that, where Gray is one of a smaller subset of those towns in that consortium that has filed a claim for underpayment
Mhm.
with Spectrum, so, and that's a sort of a separate,
Maybe that's what John was working on.
Connected,
Yeah.
but yeah, I can't remember whether it was 4 or 6 years now where our audit basically said that we were underpaid for those years, so.
There's a lot of members of that club.
Yeah, we're not alone, but
Yeah.
it's kind of a separate, I think, a parallel track, I guess,
Yeah.
to the other work.
But we have actually seen, like, in the last budget, we saw some of that revenue paid.
Yeah, every year we do, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of how much,
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
what's the right number.
So, you know, like I say, it would be good to, you know, maybe, I'm not sure who all is representing the town on that committee right now. I think it would make sense to have Kyle or Michael, or, you know, if somebody from the council would be involved, I'd be happy to do that, since I'm the liaison to the committee.
Okay.
So that's that. The rec committee did not meet last night. Anthony canceled it for lack of agenda items. So then, my next committee meets on the 19th, which is the Dry Mill Schoolhouse. And then Gray Community TV meets again on the 28th. I missed the last Library Trustees meeting, and that's not on my calendar, unfortunately. So I gotta figure that out. And that's all my committees.
Okay, great, thanks, Matthew. Anne?
Let's see. Yeah, we heard from Resiliency in the workshop earlier this evening. The committee has been working very hard to wrap up the work under the Community Resilience Partnership Grant, and has identified 5 priorities to focus on, the top one being water quality. As I said earlier, it's been a great honor to work with such a talented, high-energy group. The lake associations are really excited at the possibility of the town really focusing on some water quality issues that they've been advocating for years. And so I do hope the council will support the committee's plan to apply for another grant that would focus most on water quality and education, climate and resiliency education. Open Space will meet with the planning board this coming Thursday.
Actually, sort of point of
Oh,
information,
yeah.
that's been
Oh,
canceled.
again?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't get that memo yet. Still planning to meet with the
Yes.
planning board at some point
TBD.
to discuss open space planning. It hasn't met since the last council meeting, so I don't have anything more to report at this point. Its next meeting is Wednesday, February 14th at 6 p.m. And CEDC still lacks members and has not met. That's it for me.
Thanks, Anne. Dan?
Yeah, sorry about that,
You're telling me-
ambushing you like that.
You're telling me I don't have to go to a meeting on Thursday?
Yeah, I'm telling you, you
I
don't have
might
to
give
go
you a
to-
kiss.
As Marty said, planning board is meeting on the 8th at 7 o'clock now. The open space committee workshop with planning board is an effort to get the open space committee's expertise and the opportunity that they have to align more with our subdivision planning, such that these questions get answered up front, which even the developers would be very happy with. We still have some ordinance work to do around subdivisions and open space, but this is a really good first step. And I know they've had a little trouble connecting, but eventually they'll make the connection, and that will be a good thing. As Marty said, ZBA is meeting on the 28th, but the thing I just want to emphasize there is the fact that there's a site walk plan for them, which I think is an excellent addition to their repertoire. It's something that has been done in the past, but not for a while. I think it will be very valuable for them and help a lot with their decision makings. There's currently no brownfields committee meetings scheduled. I think the council's probably gonna have to have a conversation about the brownfields grant here at some point. but that's off into the future. And I'll be attending a GPCOG meeting this Thursday, the 8th. We had one of these meetings last fall. It's sort of the northern region is GPCOG, sort of classifies it. It includes North Yarmouth, Gray, New Gloucester, Durham, Pownell, and Cumberland. And we started this conversation, Krista and I attended the last meeting. It's just an opportunity for that group to get together and kind of brainstorm and give each other some feedback and support at some level. And so there's a follow-up meeting this Thursday night, which I'll attend. And that's all I have for committee reports.
Thanks, Dan. And thanks for going to that meeting on Thursday solo. I apologize I'm not able to attend with you. For me, the Ordinance Advisory Committee met on February 1st, where we were able to review a draft GIS map of potential future zoning areas that correspond to our comprehensive planned land use map, and also amendments we are looking to make to support what was known as LD 2003. And I want to just take a minute to thank both Doug Webster for all his work crafting that map in partnership with Al Schaefer, our kind of resident GIS expert. I know he serves on Open Space Committee, but he's been working heavily with Doug to get this work done. It was really interesting, engaging map. I think it's going to be really valuable as we look to not only identify areas where we want development, but also areas where we do not. And it helps us identify areas of sensitivity and areas that might have development constraints, particularly with slope, soil type, watershed issues where things might be in like a marshland. And then we can have those overlays with areas we've potentially identified for development and see whether or not they're actually going to correspond with that intent. So again, this was a draft map. Doug and Al are still working out the details, and OAC had a lot of good feedback about, I think everyone was pleased with the visualizations. There was still some questions about, I think Doug had on the map existing uses for a lot of areas, and so there's a policy question that's still up in the air about how we would want to expand on some areas, particularly in the rural zones, for residential uses and or commercial. So we were brainstorming about how best to approach that, and our next OAC meeting was scheduled for February 22nd at 4:30. The time could be adjusted as needed, but we thought it would be useful to get together with the OAC members, the council, and perhaps Open Space Committee and Planning Board if they're available, so we could all review that map in the room together before we move forward on really diving into finalizing amendments. So I was just curious if folks would be available for a workshop that evening. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm all in.
Okay.
I'm sorry, which evening was that again?
It's February 22nd. Our OEC is regularly at from 4:30 to 5:30, but we could, amend it in that time period if necessary.
I think you might have trouble getting planning board there that early.
It's not a regular day they're meeting, I assume. I know it's a Thursday, but
I could potentially make that.
It's I would say anywhere from like the 4:30 to 5:30 range for start time.
That's February 22nd?
Mm-hmm. And I would just, I can send an email out to,
And this is
it's to review the potential, I don't want to call it a zoning map yet, but it's amendments to the zoning map using GIS, so.
And, so the idea is that we would go to their.
So
they're
OEC is usually a virtual meeting, but we would just come here to Chambers and host everybody together to review the map. Doug, I know we had discussed this in the meeting. Would you mind just coming up since you're here?
Thursday nights are sort of a running conflict for me.
Are they?
Thursday, 5:30 to 6:30. So.
Okay. All right.
I have a commitment.
You have a commitment that day.
Report.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's a lot of people involved in this, so potentially we can get a majority of folks in the room. We might move forward. Go ahead, Doug.
Sure. Doug Webster, Planning Director. Yeah, I thought it was a good meeting as well. Thank you for your thoughts. And I would, with all due respect to your description, this is really new zoning. It's
Right.
not really, it's a pretty wholesale change. And for members that were on the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee, I encourage that group to a very large extent, disregard the current zoning. When you're redoing a comp plan, that's, as I said to the group at the time, that's really a moment in time to revisit that. So, but no, I think Thursdays, planning board occasionally will meet at 6 o'clock. So probably 5:30 might be as close as we could get.
Yeah, I know, you know better, the members of OAC, I know they prefer to meet a little earlier. Do you think they'd be amenable to meeting at 6 o'clock, or is 5:30 more up their speed?
I suspect if it was I could send out a informal
Okay, yeah,
request,
if you wouldn't
but,
mind, yeah,
but
oh,
I think
It's a
generally
one-time thing,
4:30,
hopefully
but
they could stretch.
right, okay.
Councilor McGuire knows about OAC as well, so.
Okay. Yeah, Anne, would you mind following up with open space and?
Think about their availability.
Yeah, and Dan, would you mind doing planning board?
Sure.
Yeah.
So we're
I'll get it right to
talking
them
more
anyways.
6 PM than
5:30 or 6,
5:30,
depending,
6, okay.
yeah,
On the Thursday, the 22nd.
on the 22nd, yeah. And then if that doesn't work for a majority of folks, we can look for another day, but it was kind of fresh in yours and Al's mind, and I thought it would be useful to just keep the momentum going. Thanks, Doug. I appreciate it.
Sure.
I would ask to be excused if.
Yeah, that's fine if you can't make it, no worries. And then I just want to note, moving on from OAC, GP COG's Executive Committee is scheduled to meet on February 27th for our next meeting. And we're actually going to be diving into strategic planning. We've been touching on it here and there. We had a workshop with big ideas at the beginning of the fall session with things we'd like to see for strategic planning, or strategic plan, and so we're just gonna be diving deeper into that on the 27th, and so hopefully we'll come out with some goals. Okay, great, that's all I have for, actually, that was my committee reports, yes, okay. So, let's move on to correspondence and activities. Marty, do you wanna start us off again?
I have no correspondence.
Oh, okay, that's easy enough.
That's easy.
Matthew?
Well, I guess one activity that I would bring up right now is I'm looking at the website, the upcoming events calendar, and it shows Great Town Council meeting on March 5th and 19th, and I believe
Okay,
April.
I've discovered some discrepancies because I was using that calendar to plan out my schedule, and it's not correct. So
Yeah.
I've asked that to be reconciled with the clerk's scheduling system.
Okay,
Okay.
excellent.
yeah,
Because-
just for your reference, the accurate schedule is under the government tab on our website.
But just for the council, not for all the other committees.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
that's, good
So
noted.
for instance, I think that
Yeah.
website says there's another meeting tomorrow night when it's actually a school committee meeting,
Okay,
so.
all right, yeah, well, thanks for looking into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, I've noticed a lot of, that this calendar is not accurate on many occasions, so, I mean, and to me, it's like the most obvious place somebody would, it's the most obvious place I would go on the website to find out what's going on, and it's often not right. So that would be wonderful. And I don't see, because I was looking for the library trustees, and I don't see any library trustee meetings on here.
They meet every other month,
Right.
yeah, I used to be liaison there, but I haven't been in a while, so.
I looked for like 3 months and I didn't see it.
Okay.
And that would be Josh.
Yeah,
Tuck to.
or I think
Yeah.
Darcel was doing it while Josh was intern,
Yeah.
but yeah.
But, yeah, so I mean, like I say, I missed the last one, so I was looking for the next one, and I couldn't find it. So anyway, that aside, I did take, the, MMA municipal officials training, on January 24th, I think it was, yeah. Yeah, MMA elected officials training. I took that on the 24th. Yeah, and I've seen emails that I believe we've all gotten, But other than that, I haven't had any other correspondence or.
Great. Dan?
Yes. I'll back the bus up a minute. There is a finance committee meeting on the 29th at 4 PM.
February 29th?
February 29th at 4 PM.
Yeah, I mentioned that.
Sorry, Marty, I missed that.
That's all right.
I had a couple, I think, of correspondence to mention. Bill Chapman has written to us all. Ongoing issue with the one single home storage family and the old auction building on Route 100 subdivision. Kristen and I also received an email from Lacey Anderson, who's one of our two comp committee coordinators. Lisa and Lacey have put together a questionnaire, a survey for the committees. So everybody, each of us needs to make sure that we rattle our
Yeah.
committees' cages
Yeah, I can
to
do
make
that.
sure that they get that filled out, because that's
Yeah.
important in Lacey and Lisa's effort on our behalf to help us understand how each of the town council committees is working to further the comp plan.
Thanks.
You should have a copy of that survey. If you don't have a copy of
We
that
do.
survey, let me know and I can forward that to you.
I got it. Thank you for the reminder on that.
And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Yep, I have also received several correspondences from Mr. Chapman. I did reply to him in detail about progress that the town has been working towards, and will respond to his most recent email from, I believe, today or late yesterday, shortly. I know that's been a frustrating situation for him, so I appreciate him being in touch. I also have an email from Kristen Musinski, town planner, updating me on the process for complying with the new FEMA flood maps, floodplain maps that we received notice of. We need to bring our ordinances into compliance before the deadline in June, or otherwise people that are in those new FEMA zones will lose access to flood insurance. So she's outlined a process for that work. She did say that she's gone through our ordinances and compared them to changes that we received from the agency dealing with these amendments, and that most of it is fairly just easy changes to language that we just need to align with. So it shouldn't be too much work or take too much review time, but we do need to align with the timeline. So we'll be looking to notice that in March for a public hearing on April 9th.
Will we have a workshop before we go to public hearing, or?
We can, yeah. I
part of the
didn't think that it was super involved, like it might just be something you could review in a packet, but if you would
Okay.
like to have a workshop, we certainly can.
No, that's all right. I just was curious.
Doug, do you think it warrants workshop conversation?
It's pretty straightforward.
Right, that was my understanding.
And I think one of the big take-homes, the state floodplain coordinator, Sue Baker, is strongly advising, for a host of reasons, to fully repeal the
Oh, right.
current ordinance.
That's right,
And
yeah.
fully adopt the new one, as opposed to the strike-through underline. Apparently, if you change, the state has kindly developed a custom new ordinance for the town of Gray, just like other municipalities. And if you change a comma, it could put the ability for residents to access floodplain insurance at risk.
Yeah.
So,
Go ahead, Dan.
I might use an adjective other than kindly,
Yeah.
but obviously it doesn't involve any work on our part, so I understand why you just went right to public hearing.
Right,
It makes sense.
They're
okay.
recommending a repeal and replace, not the strike-through.
Right,
No,
yeah,
I get it.
that's a,
Okay.
We don't have any say in the matter.
it's a good point of clarification, Doug, thank you.
Okay, sure.
And then, as Dan mentioned, he and I did have an email from Lacey Antonsen, one of our comp plan coordinators, about reaching out to committees for continued input on the work that they're doing to align with our goals in the comprehensive plan. So I will Lacey requested I follow up with committees, just nudging them along, and I think to Dan's point, if we all do that individually also, that would be useful.
The more people nudge, the more likely this will get done.
Right. It's easy to lose sight of that work
Yeah.
as
Yep.
we're doing other things, but I do think it's important to continue to align with the goals and the vision that the town approved overwhelmingly in November 2020. And then I had, as I mentioned, I spoke with Lena Gilmore about Community Day, and Marty mentioned this in his comments, that we were shooting for May 18th as a day to host that, but staff are not available that day, so we'll have to regroup around a date for that. And I will let everyone know when we have a proposal. Mike, I might check in with you just to see what staff think about hosting it. You probably don't know what this is. It's an event we started last year that just allows both our committees for the town and also other local organizations to come together to share information. And there was a chili cook-off and things like that.
Yeah,
so.
looking forward to learning more about it.
Okay. And that's all I had for correspondence.
Should I go?
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, Ann. I totally left you
I
off.
do have things to say. I've also had several emails from Bill Chapman. Andrew Lardy, the executive director of Tedford House, they provide housing and services for unhoused people in Greater Brunswick, asked me for a meeting. So we scheduled one for later this month. I'll let you know what happens. I'm going to do my Village Transformation Project report. We did have a session last night, an info session for the business commercial property owners in Gray. We had snail mailed a flyer to about 100 businesses and had about 15 or so people come. 20, so yeah, it was a really great turnout, actually. I was like the most business people I had ever seen in one place in Gray, I think. And they included, people like Jason Wilson, who was born and brought up in Gray, and as well as newcomers who weren't around even in just a couple of years ago when we did the charrette. So we provided them with an overview of the VTP design and planning process to date and flagged just very briefly some funding opportunities under the town's Brownfields grant, and there were a few people who said they might be interested. My sense is that the attendees were interested. They engaged in the activities that the principal group had planned, which were much like the ones we did in the charrette. And they left with some sense of optimism about what could happen and some hope for the future. So it was a big win, I think. I was really quite pleased. And many thanks to Kyle Hediniak and to Josh as interim and the principal group for helping plan this meeting. And Doug was there as well, and Bill Haskell came. So the town of Gray was well represented, let's just say that. The full team did meet last Wednesday to plan some next steps. We hadn't met since last November, I think. Kind of boils down to we need to jumpstart work on the underground utilities if we're going to have any hope of doing them. I shared with the council last week an email memo Doug had written about the work that he's done to date and kind of what's needed. So we talked about scheduling a workshop pretty soon.
We do need to do that.
And so I'll follow up with you about that, Krista. And the VTP full team, that's everybody in Gray, and as well as MDOT will meet again. We're hoping for a week after next to focus on the redesign of Brown Street. So that's going to be our immediate focus. The principal group, Sarah Turner, created a really terrific story map for the VTP, the transformation project, which will live on the town's website. And this will be a new webpage that's updated regularly with info about what's happening. And I believe that Kyle was going to go live with that tonight or first thing tomorrow. So we were just waiting for some last minute edits from MDOT.
Right,
so.
I know they were going to take a look at that, yeah, so.
They didn't get to it, so, but Dale he just texted me and he's sent some suggestions. But, one of the things that the story map or that webpage has is an opportunity for people to, provide their email address so they can be updated regularly on new developments, and, so one of the things we're gonna need to decide is like, how we use those emails, like, what kind of information are we gonna share, how often, and we'll address that in a future comms, B2B comms meeting, so, yeah, things are progressing well, I'm excited,
Great. Sorry, I left you off there.
no worries.
Okay, if there's nothing else, no, last words, no. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn at 8:14 PM.
So moved.
Second.
There's always something else.
Yeah,
Yeah, right, I know.
Dan wants to stay till 9,
Okay, Anne,
yes.
Dan,
Yeah.
Marty,
Yes.
Matthew.
Yes.
I'm also a yes. Okay.
5
Yeah,
minutes
yeah,
early,
5 minutes
Krista.
early.
Whoa,
Really
way to
rang the
go.
bell.